your book literally changed.
And you were literally there
You literally
having
there.
the experience. It basically brought up a very pivotal
Yeah.
conversation about the land of Kemet, the current
Mm-hmm.
Egypt right
Mm-hmm.
now. And we know most of that conversation, or a lot of it, has actually been hidden and
Mm-hmm.
eroded, as always, because we know Africa is the cradle of life. We
Yeah,
are
the
the
cradle,
fathers.
of human civilization.
Yes, I was actually talking about that.
Yeah.
And we know, like, the Kemetic people who are
Mm-hmm.
literally Africans, they're the ones who build these amazing pyramids and talk about the architecture, universities. Did you have that experience? Did they actually give you that history regarding the Kemetic people who are literally African people, and they're the ones who actually started all these infrastructures? Talk about the pyramid, talk about the universities.
Yeah, well, like I was sharing with you before,
Yeah.
for a number of years, I had already been learning about these
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
So theoretically, I already had a knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I was there, I was just connecting the dots for what I know. Of course, the Library of Alexandria,
Right.
you know, all the different wars. In the late 1700s, you
Yes.
had the Napoleonic Wars
Yeah.
between France and Great Britain.
Yeah.
And one of those wars was called Battle of the Nile
Mm-hmm.
in the late 1700s, where Britain won the war, Battle of the Nile. And the Nile is the seat of knowledge with the Library of Alexandria
Mm-hmm.
and all those things. This is where the knowledge of antiquity was passed into the West.
Okay.
And so, one of the time periods. And so, all of this history, like, I already was studying.
Do they mention
Mm-hmm.
that the, or like the African people,
Mm-hmm.
if you were going through that, you're taken through that tour
Mm-hmm.
about everything that you've mentioned right now?
Well, the thing is, I didn't have a tour guide in Egypt
Okay.
because majority of the tour guides are not melanated. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes.
And so, to me, I feel
Right.
like I didn't have to get someone to teach me about a history that it's not even their
Yeah.
foundation. You know what I
That's,
mean?
yes.
And so, and that was one of the surprising things when I went to Egypt. Of
Okay.
course, the the what Egypt is today.
It is today.
What, but the thing
Yes.
is, the what it is today in terms of population
Mm-hmm.
phenotypes
Mm-hmm.
is not what it was back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I know there was like a conversion that
Mm-hmm.
took place,
Yes.
and so I felt like I didn't necessarily need, like,
I get it.
you know what I mean? And so I already had a knowledge before I
Yes.
came, and
Yeah.
so I just wanted to connect the dots for
Okay.
myself.
I understand.
As I didn't feel like I need, like,
Mm-hmm.
a modern day Egyptian per se
Modern
to
day.
teach me about antiquated knowledge.
Right. About who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's super pivotal for us to actually have these experiences. And also, you mentioned something earlier again, as I was thinking about it. We have African Americans who are so fearful of traveling all the way here to Africa. And also, we have Africans here who actually want to leave Africa and who are actually not connected to their African roots or culture, and they're not actually interested about that because of the narrative that has been spread on the media, right?
Yeah.
What would you want to tell the Africans who are here and they have everything,
Yeah.
everything for, like, literally in their faces, but regarding what what is being spread on social media, you know, do you think it's propaganda, or do you think they should definitely not follow that route?
Yeah, I mean, it's not my place necessarily to tell people what they should and
Not
shouldn't
really.
do.
What's your opinion
But
about it?
I mean, I can share from experimental
Yes.
experiences within my own life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think sometimes when you live in a particular place and
Yeah.
you grew up there,
Yeah.
you don't really see the
Value?
value.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind and it's kind of like, for example, someone living in the States
Okay.
and then they travel to Africa. And then I've had this experience where I've had some brothers tell me, man, why you even want to come to
Mm-hmm.
this impoverished place
Yes.
when you live in America?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to them, like, they see me as someone who doesn't necessarily value the
Mm-hmm.
wealth that is in
Right.
America, because I'm choosing to leave this
Mm-hmm.
to come here.
Right.
And then, and me, I'm thinking like, what you mean? Listen, this place is amazing.
It's a
What you mean?
vibe.
It's a vibe.
Right.
But they're like, nah, it's not a vibe. So I think that's human nature. We think the grass is always
Right.
greener.
Yes.
Some other place. And a lot because of, for example, curriculums. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of people who grew up maybe under like the British curriculum,
Right.
where they didn't learn about the
Mm-hmm.
roots,
Yes.
because their curriculum, their
Right.
infrastructure was an Anglo-Saxons
That is true.
curriculum. And
Okay.
so as a child, if you grow up with that structure, then you will value that structure more.
Mm.
And so you then would have to have a epiphany where you say to yourself like, wow, maybe I need to go back to my roots and
Mm-hmm.
learn more about that, because I didn't learn about it growing up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you can live, for example, in Tanzania or Kenya,
Right.
and you went to private school, and there's nothing wrong with private school.
Yeah.
Your parents may have wanted you to have
Right.
a better education in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like for living in this ecosystem,
Yeah.
to have value, to be able to live a sustainable life.
Right.
But what happened is, let's say you went to private school or even public school to some degree,
Yeah.
then you go to university, then eventually you start working. Like, you really never had time to
Mm-hmm. Of course.
your whole life was living like this.
Yeah.
So you may not know about your roots
Mm-hmm.
as an African. And it's the same thing for someone living in America.
Right.
Like, you didn't learn about the history of
Of
Mansa
course.
Musa.
Of
You didn't
course.
learn about all the different histories of antiquity of the
Yeah.
wealth. And so, because that's just what happened,
Mm.
I think that each and every one of us must have that moment or that desire to draw to the roots,
That is so
because
true.
it's not readily available unless you grew up with parents that instill those values in you.
Right.
Let's go back to the village and visit grandma,
Mm-hmm.
and let's go in the bushes and get some
Right.
roots and some leaves and make some teas for our
Yes.
whatever. Like,
Yeah.
unless you grew up around family members who can teach you the cultural dance,
Mm.
the different garment types, and
Right.
um, if you didn't grow up around it, then
It's gonna be so
it's
hard.
gonna be hard.
I believe also
Yeah,
also maybe you start asking questions.
you start asking questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because there's a saying that said when the student is ready, the
that
messenger,
will appear.
yes, or the
Definitely,
teacher will appear.
of course.
And I believe it's basically up to us to start being curious or basically start asking questions. And it's okay to start asking questions because a lot of or some African communities, or if you grew up in some communities,
Mm-hmm.
they don't allow you to ask questions regarding anything, which is sad. But as we move forward, we're going to talk about the herbal part of it,
Yeah.
the herbal medicine, and
Mm-hmm.
the fact that we should definitely reconnect to the herbal plants because from my perspective, pharmaceuticals for me it's a business to
Mm.
a lot of companies, right? And the fact that Africa has been